think that horror movies are becoming more extreme? Any thoughts on that? Well, like at this particular moment in time, it certainly feels that way. Excuse me, because Terrifier 3 just opened at the box office and it's extreme. But I think the immediate counterbalance to that, counter argument to that, is that the reason that Terrifier 3 is making headlines is because it's so unprecedented that an unrated movie would make that much money and open at number one. Unprecedented, thus, has not happened before. It's not normal that something like this would happen. So then you kind of move from there and you say, okay, of our mainstream Hollywood horror movies, are they more extreme? And I don't know that we've had like if you compare the amount of gore and extreme nature of the graphic violence of now versus a decade ago versus 15 years ago, I don't think it's gotten much worse, because you have to keep in mind, what was the horror movie franchise of the zeros? What was the subgenre that dominated the zeros? Saw, torture porn. A decade of movies that were people going, ah, ah, while their guts are spraying out and they're being sawed and limbs twisted and bones, like it was that for a decade. And our horror movies now, dramatically more extreme than the Saw movies in Hostel or whatever. I don't think so. Like you could say maybe Terrifier 3 is, where there's a sick side to it that's a little bit more extreme, but it's not categorically more graphic than the Saw movies after the first two that just get real wild. So in that sense, I mean, that's going back 15, 20 years. Are horror movies becoming, well, no, they've been that way, pretty extreme for a while in what they can show. And so you start going before that, and you can go 40 years ago, rewatch Sam Raimi's Evil Dead. I mean, that's gnarly. It's unrated. So it's not Hollywood. This is independent, grindhouse, cheapy stuff, but like it's gnarly stuff. Maybe if you watch it, it seems a little bit cornier, cheesier a little bit because, the low budget, the latex or whatever, you're not, you see the effect if you're not in it, but like, it's very graphic 40 years ago. But generally speaking, the 80s R-rated movies, like a lot of these, been following the books on the making of the Friday the 13th films and how they struggled to get an R rating for like an axe to the face, which seems so tame compared to Saw movies, Terrifier 3. But axe to the face, they struggled. But also in the 80s got an R rating, Hellraiser. And as a meat guy, like no skin meat guy, that movie is nasty. And it got an R rating 35 years ago. Like, and that's a movie that feels pretty extreme to me. And even like combination of violence and sex in it it's pretty extreme. And then let's go to one of the originals. Watch The Exorcist, the original one. And it's not graphic with violence the way that modern horror movies are graphic with violence, but what she says, what she does with a cross, like stuff in it, is just still as shocking today as it was before, because it's still not stuff you put in there all that often. So do I think horror movies are becoming more extreme? It's tough for me to say yes to that. There's things that kind of go up and down, but if you watch movies outside, like in particular, the mainstream kind of has pretty different ups and downs of what is and isn't in movies. But if you just look at like all horror and you're watching smaller things and indie things, it's all kind of always been out there. And we're going back now 50 years Exorcist. What she does with a cross, whew. Evil Dead, very indie when it came out, but became mainstream, uber violent. Even Peter Jackson, his horror movies, his 80s, early 90s stuff, nasty, gnarly things in there. So my gut is to say no. Like, I don't think they're becoming more extreme. Maybe there's because the gore effects are becoming so much better, they feel more extreme because they feel more real. Like, you don't watch Evil Dead, the original one, and go, oh, that looks real. But then you watch Evil Dead 2013, the remake, and you go, that looks maybe a little bit too real. I like kind of a little bit of the low budget gore vibe to it because it's nasty, but it doesn't make me think there's a real person there being eaten alive. So I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts on this. It's an interesting question because certainly you get that feeling like they're getting more extreme. And I think maybe there's somewhat to the pacing, the atmosphere, like just there's an intensity, I think, in the way with the color grading and what you can do with contrast, and that makes an intensity that wasn't necessarily there in a lot of 80s movies, 90s movies in the same way.
Most of these clips are pulled from my Patreon live streams. I do about 6 live streams every single month. For $2 per month, $20 per year, you can get access to all the exclusive videos and live streams. For $5 per month, you get your name on my end card. At the top tier, you get a 30-minute video chat with me each month. The link down below in the description has more information.